One of the hardest things about stepfamily life is that love and fairness do not always go together. You can pour care, time, energy, and love into a child and still not get that first loyalty back. You can build a real bond and still find yourself navigating different names, different roles, different rules, and completely different emotional realities all under one roof. In today's episode, we're talking about what that actually looks like over time. Not in theory, but inside a real family, and why some of the most painful parts of stepmotherhood are also the least understood. Hello, I'm Katie South, and this is Stepmum Space, the judgment-free zone where we talk candidly about the fairy tales and scary tales of stepmum life. So whether you've been a stepmum for years, you're just starting out, or you want to understand the stepmum in your life a bit better, this is the place for you. My guest today is Lauren. Lauren was back on the show in one of the early episodes in 2022. I'll link the episode in the show notes and would recommend you go back and listen to that one first before coming on to this one. Before we start today's episode, I want to let you know that miscarriage and domestic abuse are mentioned briefly in this conversation. Please take care while listening. Let's hear from Lauren. So I have been really looking forward to this conversation. Today I'm talking with Lauren, and Lauren was on the podcast back in 2022. We worked out nearly 4 years to the exact day. So anybody who is listening to this conversation, I would urge you to go back and listen to Lauren's previous episode. I will link it in the show notes. It's called Two Stepchildren, Two Different Bonds, Stepmum Role Confusion and Unequal Relationships at Home. So without wishing to deliver any spoilers, Lauren, how are things now?
I can't believe how much has happened in those 4 years, Katie. I mean, we've kept in touch a little bit, haven't we? Which has been really nice.
Yeah.
But this is going to be so great because I'm going to be able to talk to you a lot more about some of the details of what's happened. So yes, at that point, I had been married about a year. There was my two stepchildren. They were 11 and 14. I had a tough time, if you remember. So at the time we spoke, I'd recently lost a baby.
Yeah.
And we'd just come to the end of the third round of family court proceedings that my husband had been through. He'd had 7 years of it in total, to him being the victim of domestic abuse at the end of his marriage. So, yeah, that was where we were at that point. And now, spoiler alert, we are a family of 5. I now have my 18-year-old daughter. I have a 15-year-old stepson. And I have a little girl who turned 3 about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, congratulations.
We spoke in March, and then, I got pregnant with her in June.
Gosh, and I remember you writing to me and telling me that she was coming. It was one of the things I love most about this podcast, actually, is keeping in touch with everyone's stories and hearing everyone's ups and downs and in-betweens along the way. So congratulations. I think we've said that already. And just for people listening, so it's clear. And again, I think we talked in our first conversation together about the complexities of language. So when you talk about your 18-year-old daughter and your 16-year-old stepson, those two are biological siblings from your husband's first marriage.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I call her my daughter. That's what she is to me. And that's even more so now, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But my stepson is very much my stepson. He still sees his biological mother. And then we have ours baby, who, is just an absolute bundle of absolute joy to us. And it was really interesting, actually, because they both wanted a child of their own gender before she came along. We didn't know what we were having, so we wanted it to be a surprise. And my stepson wanted a boy and my daughter wanted a girl, and they obviously weren't with us when we had her. And before we called to say what we'd had, I was like, oh, he's going to be so disappointed. He so wanted a boy. But actually, he very quickly just loved having a little sister. There's no steps in our family. It's just his sister. And it's absolutely amazing with her. She has brought us together as a total unit. And I know you've spoken a little bit about this with yours as well. So we're all biologically connected to her.
Yeah.
And she has brought us all completely together. We're all biologically connected to her. And that has been truly the incredible highlight of the last 4 years.
Oh, bless you. I'm so thrilled for you that it's worked out like that. When we last spoke, I remember you saying you'd had a miscarriage and then you were hoping to have a baby and you were working out how you were going to navigate being in a house where some people called you mum and some people didn't.
Yeah. And now I'm still navigating that in exactly the way that I thought, because now our eldest, my daughter, she calls me Lauren, but refers to me when she introduced me to her friends at university, because she's gone off to university now, as her mum. And then there's my stepson who calls me Lauren, but I'm very much stepmum. Everything is stepmum. And then there's my little girl who I am mummy. And so this weekend just passed, I had 3 cards with 3 very different ways of, exploring that. So I had a mummy card from our littlest. I had a mum card from my eldest, but it said Mummy Lauren, even though she's 18. It was Mummy Lauren. And then my stepson's card actually was hilarious. So it basically made reference to the fact that I'm sorry you're having to go through the teenage years with me, but thank goodness you didn't have to go through childbirth. And just was a joke around the whole stepmom element of it. And he was, determined to seek out something that suited our relationship. There's a lot of humour in our relationship as he's become a teenager. I take it as a real privilege that he teases me a lot and I tease him a lot. And that's where we're at.
And I really think you have to have some comfort and security in a relationship to be able to tease in a friendly way. No one gets offended. You're just bantering. There's no question of love. So it sounds like your relationship's going quite well.
It is, but there has been some more bumps in the road. We talked on the original podcast that I call him my boy. I still do occasionally, but he's huge. He's enormous. He's bigger than me, bigger feet than me, stronger than me. So that doesn't suit so much now. But it's still, you're right, lovely, pop it. I use very emotional language, caring, endearing language around messages I send him or speaking to him in the house. But he can't really be called my boy anymore in the way that when we last spoke. There's been continued complexity around conflicts of loyalty, which were there when we originally spoke.
So originally, when we spoke before, your eldest daughter was with you 100% of the time. She'd made the choice not to see her biological mother post the separation, but your boy was still going to his biological mum's every other weekend. If you're listening to this and recognizing a pattern in yourself, anxiety before contact, walking on eggshells in your own home, never fully able to relax when the kids are there, replaying conversations for hours, or finding that one text message can throw your entire week off track, that's not a personality flaw. It's the position you've ended up inside your stepfamily system. And understanding it is powerful, but understanding alone won't shift it. Back in Control is my structured program for stepmums who want to move out of chronic adjustment and vigilance and into steadiness. It's psychologically grounded, contained, and designed for women who are done living on edge in their own home. If you're ready for more than just insight, search Stepmum Space Back in Control and you'll find the details. Back to the show.
That's right. So every other weekend and an intervening Wednesday, and then about half the holidays. And that pattern has more or less continued with some little specific situations that occurred that meant it was slightly different, but that's generally the pattern. And so, my eldest, originally there was still indirect contact from her biological mother who would we would write updates, or my husband, should I say, wrote updates. And that continued for about 5 or 6 months. And then slowly the gaps became longer. And then eventually her biological mother stopped writing to her. My husband continued to write updates. but without getting anything back. And then eventually, when she was about 17 and a half, he wrote and said, I'm not even sure you're getting these. I'm not sure that you're getting anything from them. If you still want them, let me know. There was no response. So we stopped at that point. And there's been something about her turning 18 when that happened. Is that something weird about the fact that meant that her biological mother's parental responsibility had actually disappeared? There was no responsibility there anymore. She's her own person. She's an adult. That freed up something really interesting in our relationship. And there was always more of a easiness and freedom to our relationship anyway, because she wasn't seeing her biological mother. But that moment, I just felt a lightening in her, a lightening in me and how we are, because it's absolutely fine now for us to be mother and daughter. And there's nothing that can stop that. And that's who we are. And much as we had continued to try and encourage her to write back, she did for a while. She wrote Christmas cards and thank you cards for things that her biological mother had sent. When the letters stopped coming, that was it. She felt there was no more reason to feel any differently about me. And that was that.
And did she find that difficult? Because I can imagine having your mother suddenly stop any sort of contact with you may have been really painful.
She maintains that she would rather it that way. That actually she didn't want that relationship. She hadn't wanted it since she was 7. And that the letters and the cards stopping coming wasn't a problem for her. I know her quite well. I think probably it does feel more of a rejection than she is willing to let on. And I've continued to say, if you ever want to explore making contact with her, you've got her address, you've got her telephone number, she's got all of that. Anytime she wants to, it's completely fine by me. It's, very encouraged by her dad, but she's out there living her life. She's at university, fresh start for her. As she sees it, beginning with a new friendship group that don't know any of her past. And so that means that she can make a kind of clean break. I wouldn't be surprised if she revisits it. I am ready and waiting to support that when that happens. I think it's likely to happen probably when she has children of her own, which I'm hoping is a while off yet. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think she'll have questions. There'll be a sense in perhaps she might want to make some kind of confrontation in some way, demand some answers. I will be 100% there to support that. I am comfortable in our relationship. That wouldn't make any difference. And if she had an ongoing relationship with her biological mother from that point, that would be absolutely fine by me, because it wouldn't take away from what we've had and what we've got. So yes, she's amazing. And if anything, since she's gone off to university, I hear from her more than her dad. Because she asks me questions about her studies. We talk about boys, dramas, friendship dramas. And her dad's been a bit like, I haven't heard from her very much. Or, have you heard from her? What's up? And I'm like, oh yeah, we've messaged. She said about this, or she's called, or we've, FaceTimed, or
I think it's really interesting as they get older, because when my stepdaughter's coming to ours, I'm really looking forward to seeing her. And I know my husband's really looking forward to seeing her as well. But it's sort of different. It's a different looking forward to, because that's his daughter. It's his baby. He wants to see her and hug her and connect with her. And I partly want all those things, but also I just really like her. Like, I want to find out what's been going on in her world. I'm so proud of her when she does well in her studies, and our environment in our home shifts when she's here, because she's got a lovely different energy and she brings a lovely shift in.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it when she comes back. So although she's moved out of home, she's at university 25 minutes drive from where we are. So she's not far. So she can pop home, and she does. And I love that for the dynamic between her and our littlest, because I love seeing them together, which is interesting actually, because when our littlest came along, she was the one who had the first wobble. About 3 or 4 months after we had her. Yeah, it was a really interesting wobble where she worried, did dad love the new baby girl more because our relationship was a healthier one and was a more loving relationship, and was one that was, a positive relationship, and the relationship that she had been born into with her dad was not, and was obviously a difficult one because of abuse, and that she felt that therefore he'd love her more. And she also worried that I had a biological daughter of my own now. Would that make a difference? And that took a real sit down talk between the three of us, and just reassuring her that we loved her for her dad, loved her for her. He didn't love her because of any other relationship. Their relationship was something that was just between the two of them, and that he'd felt that from the moment that she was born. And he did not make that connection. And me reassuring her that she was still my first girl and that I wouldn't love her any less because of that. And ever since, she's been just amazing with our littlest, and I love seeing the two of them together.
I think you've touched on something really important there, which is that when stepchildren have the wobble about the new sibling, actually a lot of the time there's another house almost fueling that wobble. And it's what so many women find so difficult is that, well, it's not your real sister, that's your half sister. You know, in some ways there's that real difference between her being not biologically your daughter and your biological daughter being your daughter, but also at least she's in that house the whole time. So you guys can reassure her, you can show her in your every word and your every deed that she is just as much a daughter. Whereas I know there'll be people listening here who are like, if only my stepchild was with us full time, because they go back somewhere else, and that sort of half narrative is fueled.
And funnily enough, that did happen with our boy. And there was one odd phase that he went through in the early months. A bit later than that, it was a bit further down the line than our daughter having her wobble, where he started coming back from contact weekends and calling our littlest the baby, the baby. The baby kept me awake, the baby this, the baby. And I knew that that had come from elsewhere. And it was hard to challenge him on that and say, you never refer to the littlest as the baby. And where has that come from? And she doesn't keep you awake, actually. I know, because I can see you've slept through. Believe me, I've been pacing that corridor and I knew you were asleep. But it didn't last long, thankfully. And I genuinely believe that our littlest has been the making of him in so many ways. The first time she had her first bath, he was worried about how tiny she was in this big bath. We had one of the smaller little plasticky baths you put in, but he was worried that she was so tiny and the bath was so big. So he stripped down to his pants and got in with her. And you know what? He's 15 and still does that occasionally in his pants, or very, covered. But 2 nights ago, maybe, he did it. Stripped down to his pants, got in with her to play in the bath with her. He still does it now, 4 years down. And it's just wonderful. How he is with her is just incredible. What it's brought out in him in terms of nurturing and caring, and also how he leans into her in relation to when he comes back from contact. And maybe I'm picking up on a sense of it not having been a great weekend, and that she will lift him and he will go to her and they will play and he will create ridiculous games and build massive dens and out blankets and cushions, and or sit and cuddle up and watch Bluey with her. And it's just lovely.
I mean,
and
to be fair, Bluey is quite the show.
It is, because so much of the subtext of it been just incredible to see that relationship that's formed between them. And whatever perhaps has been articulated since in the other home has not worked. Their relationship is really strong. And I'm so pleased that that's happened.
So for your stepson, quite complicated for him to navigate having a relationship with his biological mother while his sister doesn't. Can you talk us through how that's played out?
The last time we spoke, there had been a lot of kind of conflict and tension between the two of them. And actually, it kind of came to a crescendo around about that time, and actually hasn't then continued. There seemed to be a big blowout about it around that time. And then they both have settled into respecting each other's positions. And she doesn't go. He does. That's the way it is. He seems to be reasonably accepting of the fact that I'm mum to her. I worry sometimes about the fact that therefore sets up the two in the house, the littlest and the biggest girl, who are I'm mum to, and then he is then the outsider. And I worry about that. I think that does occasionally play out, I think, sometimes in his behaviour. We have recently, there's been a couple of instances where he's clearly been jealous over my attention to the youngest, and then it's created a little bit of tension. But he's admitted it and actually articulated it. I've had to sit him down and say, I love you. She is my biological daughter, but I love you. And I parent you just the same, and I love you just the same. And it won't stop me doing all those things with you. And then it's a case of going, right, what can I do with him that's just the two of us that can make sure that we have that opportunity to have some time, just me and him, to reestablish that relationship, and for me to do things, simple things to show him that I care about him. So we watch movies a lot. That's me and his thing. I have watched a lot of superhero movies over the last 6.5 years. And I'll just book a cinema trip, just me and him. We'll stop off, we'll get snacks. You know, the car ride there and the car ride back is an opportunity to talk. I'll find other things that I know that I can do to spend time with him, little gestures, usually around football.
Amazing how much you know about football. Do you think he feels any sort of guilt or almost reverse loyalty bind that he goes off to his mum's and that you're not the only mum for him?
It's really funny you should say that. It had never happened before. And then probably it was about this time last year, he'd gone away for a contact weekend. He has a little enterprise that he does in terms of washing cars. And he had washed his biological mother's car. And he was away at the weekend and came back and mentioned this and that she paid him for doing it. And I said, oh, that's great. So that's more to add to your little bank account. Well done. Awesome, kind of thing. And then he was in the house and he sort of acted all weird and I couldn't work out what was going on. And I was busy doing other things, dishwasher, various other things. And he suddenly said, don't come out to the front of the house. I was like, okay, fair enough. I said, what's going on? I was like, no, come on, stay in the back bit of the house and see. And then eventually he was like, right, you're allowed to come out now. And he'd wash my car. And he said, but this one's on me.
Oh.
And it was so clear, like you say, that he had this weird reverse loyalty where because he'd done it for her and then come back and mentioned it, he then felt guilty and had to do it for me. And I'd never had that before where the loyalty had gone the opposite direction. It had always been that he felt disloyal to her if he'd done something with me. And that was clearly a conflict in him. That was the first time it had flipped the other way. And it was so strange.
I do hear that quite a bit. It's obviously not as common as the standard loyalty bind between mum and the children, but you do see it the other way, particularly when, you know, in families where the stepmum and dad have majority custody like yours.
Yeah.
My son's just turned 16, so there's something about teenage boys doing meaningful gestures that just gets me. Like, I could cry.
It is. It's when he does do things like that. Like simple stuff, like when I've been nagging him for ages about making sure he opens his blinds and makes his bed and brings his water bottle downstairs. And he hasn't done it, and I've nagged about it. And then as a way of showing me, he'll go through a stage where he does it every day for a week. And you're like, oh my God. And you know what a big deal that is when they're 15, that they've done it. And then it will slip again because he's back to feeling comfortable with me. In a way, actually, when he does those kinds of things, I'm more worried because it means that he feels like he's having to show me he loves me for some reason, rather than it just being unconditional and us just being settled into just being parent and child. If he's doing those gestures, it's all, is everything okay?
Is he trying too hard?
Is he worried about something? So yeah, there's a bigger context to a lot of the stuff that's happened with his biological mother during that period. So as I say, eldest, brilliant, littlest, wonderful relationship between the three of them, but that has been complicated. I think it was in the run up to Christmas 2023. So I'd had our youngest. So she would have been 8-9 months old. He always goes on Boxing Day for a week with his mother. And in the run up to that, over the sort of probably about 5 or 6 weeks beforehand, his behaviour had changed and I really noticed it. He was very anxious. He was needing either me or his dad to go in bed with him at night sometimes. If he woke in the night, he was being sick quite a lot in the mornings, but not through any kind of actual illness. And it was clearly anxiety. He was really anxious. And this was happening coming back from weekends. And I just felt that something wasn't right. I was picking up on something. And I have now learned since to really trust my gut on him because he went off on Boxing Day and 24 hours later, we got a phone call from his biological mother, which is incredibly rare because that's not supposed to happen. It only has to be in emergencies for her to call. And she was hysterical on the phone and said that there'd been an altercation between her and her new partner, who she'd been with for about 5 years at that point, and that she was going to need to leave the house with our boy and that we had to go and get him. And it was pitch black, 8:30 at night. I had a baby. So my husband had to drive and get him, full of all the fear and concern about the fact that this might be history repeating itself. And it turned out that they had broken up many months beforehand, but we hadn't been told. He hadn't told us. Whether that was coming from him or whether he had been told, I don't know. But he articulated it as, if you'd have known, you wouldn't have let me go to visit my biological mother on her weekend. That wouldn't have been the case. We would have come to some kind of arrangement, but it had all come to a huge head. And he didn't want to go back. She couldn't move out for a while because they continued to live together, even though they were separated. So we continued to facilitate daytime contacts on her weekends and made sure that he saw her and spent time with her and kept in touch. And we did that for about 3 or 4 months until she had found her own new place to live and had moved out. But he has been very different since then. I think the other thing that really, as I said, I felt like I really knew him. I knew something wasn't right and I trust my gut. And that feeling of knowing him so well is really interesting because I sometimes feel like I am this incredible amateur child psychologist and mind reader. Because whenever there is a shift in his behavior, whenever there's a change in atmosphere or how he is towards me, I read it so acutely. Now, you talk a lot about that idea of stepmums being incredibly observant and kind of scrutinizing of behavior and constantly being vigilant, that kind of, feeling all the time. And it can be really painful and hard and tiring. And I totally get that. But the flip side to that, it is my stepmom superpower that in many ways I feel I oddly know him sometimes better than his dad.
Yeah.
Because I scrutinize everything so much and because I'm constantly have this acute radar for shifts in his behavior and how he is, which yes is tiring and yes is exhausting, but it means that I can read things so much quicker with him. I know him so well. And I've kind of tried to change the narrative on that for me for that reason. Yeah. So whenever it is tiring and exhausting, I think, yes, but think about what that gives you in terms of you knowing him that well and using that to my advantage for our family unit and going, nope, there's been a shift. Right. Something's happened. Okay. Let's see what I can do about that. Let's see what I can do to support him. Because if I've picked up on something and if I've got a sense of what it is, I'm usually right.
I love that. I love that. I love the confidence in that. We know, don't we? We just know.
It's so strange. So when I listen to your incredible other stepmoms, and I totally get it. But it is our stepmom superpower. And I really want to emphasize that is an incredible thing that we can have and to try and see that as a positive.
Yeah, I think being observant and seeing the shifts in the child and all of those things is incredibly powerful. I think the moment it becomes more difficult for stepmums is when you find that you're walking on eggshells on your own behavior. You can't say what you want. You're, oh, should I speak up? Should I not? Oh, I want to say this, but maybe that'll be reported back on. I can't behave as I want in my home. And that hypervigilance and chronic adjustment, I call it, where you're, should I do this? Should I do that? And almost molding yourself to be acceptable. That's when it becomes a real problem for women. On my program at the moment, Back in Control, that's what we're really working on, and helping women step out of that and understand how you actually can operate in a world where you can be authentic to yourself and really feel a lot more comfortable in your own home, because walking on eggshells is not fun for anyone. But observing and being able to detect shifts in the children, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And it's not like I don't understand the other side of that. I do,
Yeah.
because I do that as well.
Yeah.
And I still do. So I still now have those moments where I think particularly around this concern that he's had more recently about whether I love our littlest, our daughter, more, and kind of slight jealousy that I'm noticing around that. I find, therefore, I'm scrutinizing how I'm behaving, and am I making sure that I'm not making him feel that way? And if I feel like I have to tell him off because he has this habit of just poking at her a lot, and most of the time it's coming from a place where he wants her attention. And it particularly happens when he's come back from a weekend away, and she will often, understandably, because she's 3, he's been away for a few nights and then he's come back, and she takes a little bit of time to readjust to him being back in the house. Sometimes I feel like, as 3-year-olds can do, she punishes him for having gone away. She'd do it to me and her dad if we go away for work, which occasionally we have done. And she does it to her brother, and he feels it. And so his way of dealing with that is sometimes just to poke at her, because he wants her attention. He wants that back again, but it's not the right way of going about it. But if I tell him off for poking at her and saying, oh, you come on, stop, trying to stand in front of the TV while she's watching what she wants, stop taking away her toys to try and get her attention. That's his version of poking. He will then get upset because he thinks that I'm taking her side over his.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because a lot of it would just be older sibling, younger sibling dynamic. And if it was same mum, same dad in the same family, you're not going to overthink it to the level that you are in, even when you have been in their lives for the length of time you have, and you've got the close relationship. You're still like, is this going to affect him? How's he feeling about the arrival of her? Whereas in a first family, it's just different.
Yeah, and I wouldn't think anything of him poking at her. Like you say, it's just siblings. And with the older two, they used to poke at each other all the time. Of course they did. And I never used to think anything of it. And I wouldn't feel bad about taking sides about who I felt was in the wrong or whatever. Whereas I definitely do with them. I think what I generally do in those moments is I move myself back and I speak to my husband and I say, on this occasion, it needs to be you that steps in, that says to him, just stop trying to irritate her and just stop trying to get her attention in that negative way. Because if I say it, I know that his response to it is going to be different from yours. And most of the time, my husband absolutely steps up. I mean, he totally gets it, and absolutely would, around the rest of our crazy lives that we have of, 2 full-time jobs and 3 children. But he will usually step up and go, yeah, you're right. It needs to be me that says it. I understand why you need to take a step back so that I'm not trying to negotiate it and say it in the right way, or worrying about what I'm saying and whether it's going to have that negative impact on him.
Yeah, it's just easy to come in and say, stop winding them up.
Yeah.
That's it. Simple. I'm interested to understand a little bit more about how it's felt for you being the one doing the vast majority of the mothering of your boy, but having him go somewhere else, and whether that's brought up any feelings in you.
All of the feelings, I think, is the answer to that. All of the feelings. It's so hard sometimes when you feel, I love the 3 of them so much. And I absolutely know, and I think I said this in the original podcast, that is not a given. But I love my 3 so much. I love the 3 of them differently because they're 3 different children, but I love them so much. And I find it so difficult to continue to be the stable, supportive, loving one, to make sure I am his rock, that he knows he can always rely on me, that I will always be loving and caring and there. I do all of the practical stuff. And to feel this responsibility that he worries that I don't love him as much as the other 2. And therefore I feel like I have to make sure that I show that all the time. But at the same time, he is loyal to his mother. He's loyal to his mum. And that therefore it feels like it doesn't cut both ways. So I'm expected to love him so much, which I do, but expected to not show those distinctions, expected to be there and be supportive and be stable and be the mum. But on Mother's Day, I didn't see him. I did actually get a text message this year. First time ever. Because in previous years, if he's been with her for the day, I won't even have had a text message. It was clearly so painful to even message. That loyalty was so strong. This year, I got a happy Mother's Day, and that felt amazing. But I was expecting not to get it.
Yeah, I want to ask you a bit more about that feeling. I think a lot of what stepmums experience is that sort of it not cutting both ways. And most of the time we're able to say, I'm a grown up, I'm going to handle it, I'm going to act in a certain way, but it doesn't stop you feeling how you feel about it. And I think that's where a lot of women find it really hard to actually vocalize how it really feels. And I wonder if you would mind sharing a bit about how it's felt for you.
It feels unfair, grossly, spectacularly unfair, that I am pouring this love and emotion and care into this child and being there and stepping up and filling a lot of gaps that should have been filled by a particular kind of mother, but haven't been. And I'm pouring all of that in, but that I ultimately will never have that back in terms of that first loyalty. The first loyalty is always to her. And that, it just feels unfair. It's the only word I can think of, really. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, talking about it. I've had counselling about it, where I went to see her initially for an 8 to 10 week period just to deal with how difficult I was finding it post him having been with us for a very long period of time, where he was only seeing her in the daytime, so not going overnight, where we went through that period. And post that period was really tough because he pulled really far back the other way. He'd really leaned into me and needed me during those 3 or 4 months. And then as soon as he started going back again, he completely pulled away. And I found it really difficult. So I went and got some help. And I specifically said, right, 8 to 10 weeks counselling about this specific issue that I'm feeling right now, and then I'll be fine. And over a year later, I was still seeing her. But what was amazing is what she asked me, a really clear question where she said, if further down the line, whether it's in 2 years or 20 years or on your deathbed, he has never, ever chosen you. He has always remained loyalty to her. Would you go back and would you change any of what you're doing now? And I said, no, I wouldn't change it, because ultimately it's all for him. I'm not doing it to make him turn around and go, oh, well, really, you've been my mum all this time, haven't you? I'm doing it because I love him and I know it's what he needs. And as soon as I felt that acceptance, that question was so clever, because I went, yeah, it is unfair. That's how I feel about it. But I wouldn't actually change it. And the moment that I accepted it, and it's a weird feeling of like, every time I get it, feel it coming, I go, but remember that no matter what, you wouldn't change it. And that weird feeling of acceptance sometimes gives me calm.
Yeah, and you're so right. And it's in those moments when, I'll ask a client a question and you'll see a shift. You see it flash through the eyes and you see that shift, and that's something that they can come back to, that they can hold on to. Because what I do, and obviously what your counsellor is able to do, is to see what's going on for you and actually help you understand it yourself, rather than telling you what's going on. It's about you actually making the choices for you and what you're going to do. So the brilliance of an incredible coaching question or an incredible counseling question is it allows you to see everything really, really clearly, and it gives you an anchor. So when you are in that situation, like you said, you've got something to come back to. That acceptance is so important. So I'm so pleased that you found somebody to work with who worked for you.
Yeah. We worked on lots and lots of different things during the time we were together. But that's the question I remember really vividly about that moment of clarity. And so I will continue to keep doing what I'm doing for him, because it won't make any difference.
I think the other thing it does as well is it lets you lead. So it's almost like you are not being done to by the family, then you're making the choice, well, this is how I'm going to show up. And it's not for anything apart from the fact that this is how I want to show up.
Yeah.
And you're aware that you might not get anything back. It's kind of easier. You get less disappointed.
Yeah. So I just keep mumming in the way that I mum. I mum in 3 different ways to 3 different kids. I just keep that going. It doesn't matter how chaotic the contact is. It doesn't matter what happens in relation to that. I just keep telling myself that you wouldn't change it, and he needs it. And if he needs it, then that's what I'm going to be.
And for somebody who's at an earlier point in this journey of being a majority stepmom and facing some of the challenges that you've faced, what advice would you give to them?
Oh dear, what advice? Definitely have a good, honest conversation with your partner or husband. Lean together rather than leaning apart. Those conversations are so important. Communication between the 2 of you is so important. Find somebody who you can trust to talk to, but who's willing to be honest with you. That might be a coach. It might be a counsellor. It might be a really good best friend who also is a stepmom and is somewhere on the journey alongside you. But you need to have that village. It's really interesting, isn't it? We say it takes a village to bring up a child. It takes a village to help a stepmom, because I think you need that support network around you. I'm really lucky to have amazing in-laws as well. My husband's parents are fantastic and are really supportive of me in terms of what I've brought to the family and what I'm trying to do, and will absolutely have my back in terms of the children and my decisions about the children, and, you know, mine and my husband's decisions together about parenting them. So I think, having that support network around you is absolutely critical. But you need to be brave enough to go and ask for that help, I think, and ask those questions.
And also it's going to very much help you organise your thoughts with some external perspective, because what I see in so many of the women I work with is they bring their story. We all do it. We create a story about something that's happened and what it means. And a lot of the time you need somebody to prod at that a bit and kind of ask uncomfortable questions. Well, how true is that? What does that mean about you? It's so difficult to open up in that way to your partner, because there's always the risk with everyone that it comes across as, I don't like your kids. And I've never seen that. It's always just a really, really difficult situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely having someone to talk to, but having someone who just will ask those difficult questions, like you say. You don't want a yes man or woman. You want someone who will challenge you occasionally or say, are you sure that that's the right approach? Or if you'd have tried something different, would it have had a different response? Why don't you try this next time? Or you need that, I think.
We're so good at convincing ourselves that things are facts when they're not always facts, you know? And I do with a lot of clients to unpick what is true about a situation, about a person, about a relationship. And sometimes you need to see it from a different perspective. And that's quite hard to do when you're stuck in the spiral that a lot of women are in, of overthinking everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other advice I'd give is obviously to listen to Stepmum Space on a regular basis. I mean, seriously, whenever I'm in one of those really difficult places, I just go, right, is there an episode that I haven't listened to for a while, or is there a new one out? Take the dog out for a walk, stick in the headphones and listen and nod along, cry along, laugh along, just to reassure you that so much of what you're thinking and you're feeling is normal. There are so many different stories that you have told on the podcast, or people who've told their stories to you. And all of us have slightly different setups and dynamics, whether, like you say, they're a full-time step parent or an every other weekend step parent, whether they had children of their own that they brought to it or had one later, or maybe they're child-free by choice, all these different elements. But there will always be something in one of the podcasts where you're like, yep, yeah, that's me. I've done that, or I felt that. And that feeling that you are not alone is so important, because not everybody has other step mums in their friendship circle. I'm lucky I do. I have a couple of them around me, but even then their situations are so distinct from mine. I mean, obviously I've told them all to listen, I send links to latest episodes and go, this one you've definitely got to listen to. And I know how much they value that as well. So yeah, having that, because there are so few places to go. There's so little research. There's so few forums.
Well, firstly, thank you for spreading the word about Stepmum Space, because it is something which I feel so passionate about, because that feeling of being alone with all these feelings, and because of the historic pathologizing of stepmums, feeling like you are the worst person in the world is horrible. And I laugh because most of the messages I get start with, oh my God, I thought I was the only person who felt this way. And I think creating that community is so important. And whatever program or workshop I run, one of the biggest things that women get out of it is that connection and that ongoing support and ongoing friendship. And you can almost feel the shoulders drop in the room as people share their experiences. And there's always one person who's the brave one who'll say the uncomfortable thing first. And then suddenly it's almost like there's permission to say the unsayable. And that is such an incredible thing to be part of, because it gives people the space to just be, to not perform, to just be who you are. So I'm very much looking forward to the next workshop, which starts on the 17th of April. And there are still a couple of spaces available. Just that connection for people, it matters more than you will ever know. You get NCT for new mums, or baby group, or play group. And when you become a stepmom, it's just not the same. So there are many things on my to-do list around this. But yeah, I'm really pleased that it's been a useful resource. And I'm really grateful to you for telling your story, not just once, but twice. I'm going to ask you a question, Lauren. If you could tell yourself 4 years ago something, what would you tell her?
What would I tell myself? That there is going to be so much love and joy and laughter. And it may feel at the moment like you have a curse and that everything is going wrong, but that it will be worth it. Every single moment of it was worth it for the 3 absolutely stunning children that I have. And now I just focus on that incredible bond that there is between my 3 children, whether biological or non-biological, whether they call me mum or call me Lauren or call me mummy Lauren or whatever it is they call me. The bond that the 3 of them have is spectacular. And having the privilege of witnessing that and being there to share in that sibling bond is just the best possible thing to experience. And it was worth it. Everything was worth it. So yeah, that's what I probably reassure myself.
And that'll be reassuring to a lot of people to hear it as well, because when you're in the trenches, it is tough. So I want to say a massive thank you to you for coming back. I think the first time we spoke, I remember getting shivers, goosebumps when you talked about being able to imagine what it was like seeing your eldest on her wedding day. And just when you were talking about the sibling bond, then I got shivers again. So it's such a pleasure to talk to you. And I'm really grateful to you for coming back, sharing your story. And I'm so delighted that it's working out so well, notwithstanding the obvious challenges.
It's no problem at all. And thank you for what you do for us. Keep going, keep letting all these amazing stepmoms tell their stories. We will keep listening.
Thank you. Oh, I love having previous guests back to hear how their families have changed over the years. And I think one of the most important things in that conversation is this. In a family with more than one stepchild, you can care about all the children and still have completely different relationships with each of them. And that doesn't necessarily mean something's gone wrong with you. But where this tends to get difficult is when you start questioning yourself, overthinking it, trying to get it right, trying to change things, adjusting how you show up, just to try and improve the situation for everybody else. Sometimes you, but often everybody else. And that's usually the point when it starts to take up far more space than you want it to. If you've recognised yourself in that, especially the overthinking, the eggshells, the constant adjusting, that's exactly the kind of thing I'm working on with women inside Back in Control at the moment. Not changing the whole system, but changing how you experience and respond to it so it doesn't keep pulling you in. We start in April and there are just a few spots remaining. So if you've been listening and thinking, this is me, this is the point to do something about it. You can find the details in the show notes or just message me and we can talk it through. Otherwise, I'll be back soon with another new episode. Make sure you're following the podcast so you don't miss it. And before we finish, if you're listening to Stepmum Space and recognising yourself in the constant adjustment, the walking on eggshells, the anticipatory anxiety before contact, or the way one message can derail your whole week, that doesn't make you weak. It's a position many stepmums find themselves pulled into inside complex stepfamily systems, and it's more common than people realise. Back in Control is my structured programme for stepmums who are ready to move out of chronic vigilance and into steadiness inside their own home. It's psychologically grounded, contained, and designed specifically for stepfamilies where dynamics feel destabilising. If you're ready for more than just insight, search Stepmum Space Back in Control and you'll find the details. Back in Control, structured support for stepmums who are done walking on eggshells and are ready to feel steady again.